Good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, May 12th, and this is 10 on Tuesdays. I'm Holly Hoffman, founding partner and CEO of the Sales and Income Tax Advisory Network. I'm a former Wisconsin Department of Revenue auditor, speaker, and sales tax law expert. I made the decision last October to leave DOR and use my experience to work directly for you, Wisconsin businesses. So thank you for joining my web chats, 10 on Tuesdays, every Tuesday from 10 to 10:30 a.m. So 2 weeks ago, we started a topic series about sales and use tax audits, and we're going to continue that topic today discussing the audit process. You can check out previous episodes on my 10 on Tuesdays channel. To find my channel, go to salesandincometacx.com/event and click on 10 on Tuesdays. You will find links there for registration and the 10 on Tuesdays channel. Before we get into today's topic, I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of some updates. We have a new tax exemption for contractors who do temporarily store materials in Wisconsin that are then used to create real property construction activities outside of Wisconsin. There's nuances to this exemption. We all know how that goes, but be sure to look at my website. I have an article out there about this. If you go to salesandincometacx.com, right at the top of the website is the article in red. So check that out to understand the details of that, and hey, take advantage of this exemption if it applies to you. It's effective June 1st of 2020. So if you have projects coming up out of state, it would be definitely something you want to look at. I've also been talking all year about video gambling machines and that there's going to be stricter enforcement under the current administration. And the April 2020 Wisconsin Tax Bulletin, published by Wisconsin Department of Revenue, has a lengthy article regarding the rules and regulations surrounding video gambling machines. And like I've been telling people, when DOR makes a point to remind you about the laws, it's going to be followed up by enforcement actions. So check out my March 23rd article regarding the tax treatment of amusement devices, including video gambling machines. You can find my news articles on my homepage at salesandincometacx.com. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page under news, I have various news articles for you to check out. The Sales and Income Tax Advisory Network is focused on helping businesses by focusing on advising and training, advising businesses how to minimize their sales tax liabilities and look for possible refund claims to file, training owners and staff on how to improve their sales tax record keeping and reporting processes to reduce cost and risk, training, empowering owners as to how to navigate a sales tax audit, and that's a lot of what we're discussing this week and the past couple of weeks about sales and use tax audits here on 10 on Tuesdays. My website, salesandincometacx.com, showcases several important services and special rates available that could be very useful for your business. So check it out. We got the sales and use tax compliance assessment. That's where I come out and do an audit risk review of your business to make sure that you're prepared and on top of things should you ever be audited. But more importantly, are you paying the correct amount of tax? Are you overpaying? A lot of people are overpaying. So something to check into. Add an expert sales tax advisor to your staff to handle training, tax law changes, compliance, and audit. You can do that starting as low as $500 a month. So I would help you train your staff, give you support, give you guidance, be there for you without you worrying about how much is that going to cost. It's just something you pay on a monthly fee. It also includes audit defense. So check that out. And then we also have memberships. If you're a business, maybe a supplier whose customers could benefit from my services, or if you're a tax advisor or a tax attorney, check out our support services that we can provide to you also. And then most importantly, audit is still continuing. I actually have a couple clients under audit right now. We have an audit defense relief package. The first 5 hours of audit defense are billed at $200 an hour, and then the second 5 hours are free during this coronavirus mandate with the shutdown. So if you're under audit or get notified in audit, book a free consultation with me, at least discuss and get some guidance. So today we're talking about the audit process. And the important thing to understand, or the reason for understanding the audit process, is so that you know what to expect, what's coming next in the audit, what the point of each step is, so that you know what to focus on and what to do. Sometimes folks get into audits and they think, oh, this is it. They said this and now it's all done. And that's not how it is. There's a whole process. So let's talk about that process. There's basically 7 steps. And I laugh because as I was writing this, I'm like, 7 steps, that sounds like 7 stages of grief. Well, let's not grieve over an audit. Let's take control of it and manage it and not be afraid of it. Let's come out on top here. So the first step is you get your notice of audit. We've been kind of talking about that the last couple of weeks. So you will get a letter, then you get a follow-up. You're going to have a phone call as a result of that letter. And then after the phone call, the follow-up email, which is really the records request. Then there's going to be a recorded record review, I'm sorry. And that's the main part of the audit, the field audit part. Then the auditor will provide preliminary schedules, then a proposed audit report, and then you finally get to the final conference. And then after that, you will get in the mail a notice of amount due or possibly a notice that you're going to receive a refund. Let's hope for the refund. So let's talk about step 1. You receive an audit notice. Let me first say there's been a lot of scams and concerns with people fishing for information or trying to scam people out of money, claiming you're going to be under arrest. Wisconsin Department of Revenue, when they notify you of an audit, it's always going to be in a letter. It's going to come in a letter to you first, and it'll give you contact information. And if you don't trust that the letter's real, you can call your local DOR office and ask them to look into it, and they can look it up for you. But it's always going to come in a letter via mail, so make sure you open that. And the letter, we talked about this the last couple of weeks. It's going to have some basic information, identify what's under audit, what tax type, and then it instructs you to contact the auditor, and it gives you the audit contact information. You have 5 days to schedule the audit. Doesn't mean you have to start the audit in 5 days. They just request you to respond to them within 5 days of the notice, of receiving the notice, to schedule the audit and talk with the auditor. Again, hang on to this letter because remember it has the supervisor's contact information on there. So when you call, we talked last week what happens when you call the auditor and do an initial discussion about your business and the audit. That's kind of where the auditor gets an idea of what records to request. But really, the purpose of the phone call is to set date, time, location of the audit. So what the auditor is going to do is follow up with an email to confirm date, time, and location of the start of the audit. And then that email is also going to contain a records request, which seems like every record you could possibly have for your business for all sales and purchases. And honestly, it really is. At this point, they may not have an idea of what type of sampling they can do on your records. So it might say all sales records, or it might request more information, or this is a popular topic. They may request a backup if you have QuickBooks. And yes, legally they have a right to your QuickBooks records. And that's because QuickBooks is now the modern version of your original books of entry. So instead of entering things into a ledger book, now you enter them into QuickBooks. And if you don't provide the backup, DOR can subpoena it. And I mean, either way, they're going to get it. It's just easier to cooperate. There are some circumstances where you aren't able to provide that because you only have a live online version. And I definitely wouldn't want to share your live online version with someone else, with any party, because they could accidentally enter things on your live accounting software. But anyway, so step 2 is going to be the records request, basically. And this is where you start collecting all the information that your auditor wants to see on your business. And remember last week we talked about, and the week before, this would be when you want to reach out and get some advice and some help. So step 3 occurs when the auditor, it's the date you set for the auditor to come out and look at records. So you should have pulled as much, if not all, of the records and information together that the auditor requested. And then the auditor will come to, it can be your business location if you have space for the auditor to review the records. You may choose to have the auditor review your records at your tax professional's office. You can choose to have the records reviewed at a DOR office. Or I've seen people, their bank has a conference room that they're allowed to use if they're a member, or other place that they rent or have access to that is just basically a conference room. So the record review occurs. Now, right now, we're under the weird situation of the shutdown and the coronavirus safer at home order. So auditors are not reviewing records or meeting anyone in person. They're all working from their homes. Even most of the DOR offices are shut down. If they are open, it's only as a drop-off as needed. So what I was informed of what auditors are doing right now is anything you can send electronically, they take. If it can be mailed, there's special arrangements you can make to mail it to your auditor. I don't recommend that for records since you have one copy of the original. But it's mostly just providing things electronically. And then once the safer at home order is lifted, where the DOR offices can reopen and auditors can meet with people, then they're going to start doing the in-person record review. So it's a very unusual situation. So right now, it's sort of on hold on that. So after the auditor reviews your records, they'll look at everything in the field at your business or wherever the location might be. Then they're going to take that, it's just a whole bunch of data at that point. They'll take that back to their office and they'll sift through it and start creating these preliminary schedules. And then they're going to come back with you with preliminary schedules that are just a bunch of spreadsheets. And it's going to list all transactions that the auditor has questions on, whether it's purchases or sales or fixed asset purchases or sales. And what these preliminary schedules list isn't that this is definitely taxable and you didn't pay tax. It's any and all transaction that the auditor either didn't understand, thinks might possibly be taxable, thinks they didn't see receipts for or documentation for. So it's a lot of things. I put at the bottom, these schedules are not final and they're not accurate. And by accurate, I mean, this is what you're going to owe tax on. This is set in stone. These schedules are very, well, they're organized schedules, but it's a mess of different things. So when you review these, you're going to provide additional documentation. Some things might just be explanations of information that the auditor didn't understand, maybe a business process or something like that. So this is where your work, your response comes into play to the auditor. And remember last week we talked about being focused and having a strategic approach. This is when you're going to look at these schedules and look for highest dollar amounts, most frequently occurring transactions, to get those resolved first so that you're actually making a significant impact on your audit. You will also receive a 120-day notice to contact your vendors and customers. What the heck is this? The law provides you protection that you have the opportunity to verify or prove if tax was paid on purchases or sales, wherever the DOR is trying to pick up tax. So you have 120 days at least to obtain documentation. DOR can't close down the audit before 120 days from this notice and say you can't provide documentation to say that definitely your customer paid tax, remitted tax directly to DOR, or maybe your vendor remitted tax on your behalf because they forgot to charge you tax. DOR can't reveal if someone else was under audit, and each auditor doesn't necessarily know who is all under audit, and they can't search for every vendor or customer you have contact with. So if there is a large adjustment for a specific vendor or customer, you would definitely want to reach out to them and just verify, hey, did you pay tax? And DOR does provide a form letter that you can use, and you can adjust it how you want and reach out to your customers or vendors. So now you've gone through and, as much as possible, responded to or provided additional documentation to the initial preliminary schedules. Now the auditor is going to clean up that report and provide you a proposed audit report. This is, as much as possible, this is what it's looking like of what we're going to make adjustments on, what we're going to assess tax on, or what you have credit coming for. The proposed audit report would also include a summary and include calculation of the tax due, interest, and possible penalties. Usually this comes with a 30-day period for you to review and present any final arguments or documentation that you may have to refute anything that's listed on here. And this is when you negotiate on possibly adjustments the auditor's making or penalties. Penalties are definitely negotiable, so please keep that in mind. Interest is not negotiable. If they are applying delinquent interest or non-filer interest at 18%, it is possible to negotiate that down to the normal 12% interest rate. But beyond that, that is not negotiable because interest is determined by law, and that DOR doesn't have authorization to adjust that. So the things you can adjust is what's being assessed to determine tax due, so you can negotiate to adjust that, and you can negotiate to adjust penalties, okay? And this is where you would do that. And the settlement and negotiation part, I think we're going to do a segment on that coming up. But that is not as formal as you would think. If you have a large adjustment and it's a gray area and you were doing your best and DOR isn't quite sure how, there's questions about it, then you say, based on these reasons, A, B, and C, I think it would be fair to reduce this adjustment by such and such a percentage. And that percentage, it varies based on the facts of the situation, but that's how you go about it. If you're at an impasse with your auditor, you can negotiate directly with the supervisor. So just so you know that, that's common, absolutely common. Do it. It should be part of your audit. So step 6 is final conference. So after the proposed audit report, you take that 30 days or whatever time you need it, and you can request an extension of the 30 days if necessary. But your final conference is when you review the finalized audit report. It's the close of audit negotiations. You're going to agree, partially disagree, or disagree in full to the audit determination. And outstanding disagreements can't be, any further negotiation isn't done in this part. It's going to have to be addressed in appeals. And if you agree and end up owing money, you can choose to pay in full at this time. If you have a refund coming, and let's hope that's the case, you don't get paid at this time. We'll talk about when you get paid. The purpose of paying at this time, if you owe money, is that it stops interest from accruing. Otherwise, the process after this close of the audit can take up to another 30 to 60 days to receive the invoice to pay your bill. And so that's another month or 2 months of additional interest that accrues. Also, I just want to say, if you choose to pay, it has to be in full. They don't take partial payments at that point. Okay. Step 7, notice of amount due or refund. So after you sign off on the audit, then you're waiting to receive the finalized copy, because after the auditor finishes and closes the audit then goes through a review process at DOR in the Madison office, and management reviews the details of the audit and ensures everything's accurate and that things are calculated correctly, that all issues were addressed appropriately, and then signs off on it. And at that point, then a notice of amount due notice or refund notice is sent out to you with a copy of the finalized audit report. At this point, you have 60 days to pay in full or appeal, and you can choose to pay in full and appeal. If you do not pay in full, you pay partial, or you don't pay at all and you have amount due, you will begin to incur delinquent interest and other penalties on the payment. It is better to not use DOR as a bank and get a loan to pay the tax due. So you have 60 days to file an appeal if there's an issue you disagree with. Please note, if you're filing an appeal, you have to have some type of documentation, additional documentation that was not shown in the audit in order to file the appeal, okay? 2 years to file a claim for refund of tax assessed in the audit. So the clock starts running for the appeal, but it also starts running on a new statute of limitations to file a claim for refund. So normally a claim for refund is a 4U statute of limitations. When you finish an audit, you may be 6, 7 years out for the initial year of the audit period and beyond the ability to claim a refund. However, any amounts assessed during the audit starts a new statute of limitations clock. It runs for 2 years. But again, it doesn't keep the whole period open. to file a claim for refund. It only keeps open anything that was assessed during the audit. And there are times, it's not uncommon, that the auditor assesses in the audit and it was incorrectly assessed, and either you find exemption certificates or obtain exemption certificates, or you can prove that the amount assessed qualified for an exemption or whatever. You can provide documentation to substantiate that the claim for refund is due, that the amount was assessed incorrectly, and you can get that money back. You may need at this point to amend subsequent returns. So any adjustments made in your audit, if it's adjustments that apply to issues you have after the end of the audit period, you will need to amend returns, and DOR will put a note in your file and watch to ensure those subsequent returns are amended. So again, the audit process is basically 7 steps from receiving that initial letter to the point of receiving the notice of amount due or notice of refund, where the audit is completely finalized. And at that point, the appeal process can begin. So hopefully you have a better understanding of the direction and how things play out during the audit process. Next week, we're going to talk about audit negotiations, and that'll be an interesting one. There's not specific guide or direction, but audit negotiations are significant and something you absolutely should be aware of and play into every single audit. So I hope you join me next week for that. Please check out my website, salesandincometax.com, and I'm going to open things up if anyone has any questions or discussion that they'd like to talk about audit. Let's discuss it now. Let me get you. Yes. Let me get you unmuted here. Hi, Dave. Dia. Tom. Hi, Tiffany. Did anyone have any questions today? I just want to note to all of you that attend, I appreciate it. And you can reach me anytime via email or phone. If you have questions or concerns, or you're not sure, you know, call up and talk to me and see if there's something I can guide you on or help you with. And don't just sit there struggling on your own. I'm here to help. So. All right, I look forward to talking to you next week about audit negotiations. I will talk to you then. Have a good week, everyone.